All right, so railings are comprised of two basic components in the design. You have your horizontal components of your railing. Revit calls these rails. The vertical components of the design, Revit calls balusters. Now, if you guys just want to fire up the railing tool, and it doesn't matter which railing you want to choose. From the share out folder tonight, there's that good stairs example one here, which I will, I'll just pull that down here and open some of that up. So you've been able to see some of the different examples of what you can do with Revit's railings. So in the session 7 here, we've got the SO7 railings. SO7 railings, so I'm just going to download that. And so if you go, folks go into the share out folder and find the session 7 SO7 railings, we can look at some of the different kinds of railings that you can get. Okay, so I'm going to open that up right now here. Okay, so we're going to look at it in 3D here, and kind of a cross-section of the different kinds of railing styles that you can get, from sort of your 70s style residential railing with those wretched white pine spindles, to some other kinds of designs here that you can see that you can go through. So we run the gamut from sort of more complex metal rails to utility grade rails and glass panels, and finally down at the end a fairly complex section of verticals and horizontals that we actually use as an example in the dialog boxes that we see on page 5 and 6. So if you have your own railing design in mind, you really sort of need to have a little sketch of it to help you to guide you through the processes that you need to use to design to put that design into Revit. So with this one here, I am going to, how far does this elevation look? I'm just checking to see how far I'm looking. What I'm going to do is I'm actually going to draw a little section here, just parallel to my railing, so that I'm looking at nothing but this Deco Type 60 railing. So I'm just doing that in plan here. So kind of using a section like you would use an elevation. Okay, so here is the railing. We're also looking sideways at a bit of that text. All right, I'll turn the color on here. So if we look at the design of this railing, we've got some horizontals and we have some vertical components of the design. Now, anytime that you come up with a railing design, you got to think about the horizontals first. The horizontals, what Revit calls the rails, set the heights of all of the verticals that you will add to the design subsequently. So I'm going to click on this railing here, and I'm going to go to its type properties. So if you look at the notes, we've got page 5, we've got railings, and those rails are made of two parts. Number 1 rails, number 2 balusters. So here is the type properties, and you can see we've got the two buttons here, rail structure and baluster placement. So step 1 is to go into these rails. Now Revit calls them non-continuous. Now that's not exactly true, but the reason that Revit will call it non-continuous is that if you're running a railing up the inside of a stair, And Henry showed how you can do the tread offsets so you don't end up with a gooseneck when the stair does the return up a switchback stair on the inside. Now, if you do pull that stunt and you've got your first and last tread of each flight separated by the landing right side by side, you are going to get a gooseneck in that internal railing because it just can't negotiate or navigate that change in elevation without doing so. And Revit will then take these rails that are called non-continuous and it will break them. So it means that you will not see those horizontal components of your stair go up on the inside of the wall, hit the landing and turn the corners, 180 degrees and go back up the other side without stopping. So that is why the software calls it non-continuous. Revit has other components of its railing property set, which we'll go over, that it tries to make more continuous. In particular, the handrail. So you want that graspable component of the railings design, whatever people are hanging on to. So what these rails really function as is more as the guard. Now you folks know that the building code talks about railings as guards, something to prevent you from falling. So really the handrail in your railing is not driven by rails. There's a separate section farther down in the type properties that we'll discuss in a few minutes. So railings here, this is just for the design of the guard. So in here, we've got a series of different rails. Again, these are just for decorative purposes or to function as the guard that start from the bottom. So 0 would be right on the floor or right on the stair. And then here we go right up to 42 inches. So what have we got? We've got probably this bottom wide thing at the bottom and another thing here. And you can see here that there's a series of profiles. So what it is with the rails is we give them a name. The name is up to you. So here you can see the insert button. You can add as many horizontals to your design as you need. Then you define the height for each one. So after you've done that, the offset here is when you draw that railing across your screen, the pink sketch line that you see, those numbers that you see mean the offset between that pink line and where you want these horizontal components to sit with respect to that line. So typically we just have them all at 0 to begin with, unless you need one to sit a little bit farther offset than the others. So from the ground, working our way up, and then here we've got these profiles. Now, remember when we talked about gutters with our roofs, and we were talking about how gutters are based on profiles. So profile is just a 2D shape that gets loaded into Revit. It's a profile family. So just like you load a door family, you load in a profile family, and all of these that are listed here, you would see them down under the profiles folder in the project browser. So that's what defines all the different potential shapes that you can make for these horizontal components of your railing. So for something like this, I've got this pattern, and the part that is repeating is the tall baluster here and a tall baluster here. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Those 5 verticals depend on the heights defined here in the Rails dialog box for when they start and when they terminate. So when they start and when they terminate. So the start and finish of all of your balusters, they take their measurements, or they take their start and stop by the different rails that we have here in this dialog box. So rails defined first, and then balusters second. Now, looking at the bottom of page 5, this is the baluster dialog box, and it looks like someone who's making an ode to Excel. I don't find this to be a particularly cheering dialog box to be working in all the time. It's a little bit, I don't know. It's just not really that fun. So here, I can turn on this preview, and it doesn't really help you to understand what is baluster and what is all this crap. What are we talking about here? Well, let's flip over the page to page 6, and if you go midway down to page 6, you can see on the right hand side there is the start and the end. So I'm just going to go back to grab my markers here. I never remember to bring my markers on BCIT notes. Ridiculous. Okay, don't even have any markers here. Okay, so what we'll do here is just talk about the pattern and how it works. So looking at the notes, you can see we've got a start and an end, and that relates to this main pattern that you see up here. So when we look at this railings design out in the view here, you can see that it repeats. So you have a long, short, 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 and then a long, long, short, 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 long. That module repeats all the way down the length of the railing. And you can see you've actually got one long that's right here. It's embedded into this newel post. So that's the pattern that repeats. So you have, first of all, here you have to figure out how many verticals that are going to be in the module. So this one here at the beginning. So the pattern starts, and we come over 3 inches. So there it is, 3 inches from the start, and we put in this what they call major. Now somebody called it that. I might call it tall. And the rest of these I could call them all short. You can call them what you will. So it starts from the host, starts from the stair or from the floor, and it goes up to rail 1. So from the host to rail 1. So if we went back and looked at the rails dialog, we would see all of these different rails here listed. So this is where we define what repeats, and it's all based on the center to center spacing from one baluster to the next. So starting at row 1, that's the start. Okay, then from there the first baluster goes 3 inches from the start of the pattern and puts in a tall one. Then the next baluster, which is shorter, starts 7 inches after the tall one and starts from inside bottom to inside top. Again, these are both the rails. So you can see that repeats 3 times, so 7 inches, 7 inches, 7 inches. And then at row 6 here, we go 7 inches from the last short picket, and we put in another one of these longer pickets. Then 3 inches after that, the pattern stops and then starts again. So that module gets repeated ad infinitum for as long as you draw that pink line across the screen.
Does the host mean the floor?
It does. The floor or the stair. Yeah. So that's kind of the long and short of it. Now, what happens if the module doesn't quite work? So here you can see that the module length is 2 feet 10 inches. So at 3 inches plus 1, 2, 3, 4 times 7 inches, so and then another 3 inches after that. So that is where the 2 foot 10 inches comes from. So if you draw a stretch of railing that's like 7 foot 2 inches long or 7 foot 8 1/8 inches long, you're not going to get an even number of these modules into the drawing. So what do? Well, that's where we have this justify option. So you can either center justify them, or you can get Revit to fudge the spacings that you used here to try and make sure that you get an even amount of these modules. So for something like this where you're just using pickets, the spread pattern to fit works really well. But sometimes with our other railing styles, like here with these glass handrails, you guys can see what's happening. These glass panels don't get their size adjusted. Not yet. I hear that's coming in a future version of Revit, but I've been waiting a long time and I'd like to see it happen. Revit doesn't know how to, at this point, stretch those panels to suit. So if I draw my railing 6 inches longer than I did it last time, you can either ask Revit to stack all these panels so that the gap is at the beginning, or stack them all so it's at the end, or you can get Revit to center it between the beginning and the end to minimize the gap at either end. Or if I go into this one's Baluster dialog box, see here I could center it, and then excess fill length. This is really pretty. So then I could go and I could put in a bunch of balusters just to fill the gap at either end. Like, really? So, you know, it could fill them in if it could. I guess my spacing was a little bit wonky. Spacing, 0 inches. Oh, that's not good. It has to be at least, oh, I don't know, 4 inches, right, to satisfy the code.
Well, so I tried the spread to fit with the glass and it filled it.
It did, but what will happen is that the brackets might not look they're attached to the balusters anymore. So good point. Let's just give that a go. So here, if I say spread to fit, hit OK, might see a few gaps. Yeah, see, they're being held in place by Star Trek, right? And force fields to hold those suckers up now. So we're kind of waiting for a little solution to this because on stairs this becomes a little bit more tedious. So that's kind of the introduction to that main part of the Balusters dialog box, which is the main pattern. So this is the part at the top, and that's on page 6, explains how it works. Now, let's go to talk about at the bottom here. This is actually a lot easier to understand, the posts. Now you can see that this railing style here, this Deco Type 60, has these heavy posts that are used at either end of the railing. So if I were to edit the path here, and I'll just add another length on. So it puts these newel posts on at corners and at the beginning and end of the railing length. Henry might have mentioned when you do a railing sketch, you can't have gaps in it. So if I wanted to have a little opening like that, Revit says no dice. It has to be a continuous length. So I would have to then do another railing just like the one I've drawn here. Hope you folks know, anytime you've got an object selected in Revit, type in CS for create similar, and you get an object just like the one that you had selected. So if I wanted to create a little gap there, I just have to add another piece of that railing. So with regards to these posts, these corner posts, so looking at the bottom of the Baluster dialog box here, they have their own settings, and they are not meant to be placed along the railing. Now you can see here that your horizontals, like your parts of the guard, terminate against these posts. So what happens is that Revit breaks up the module, breaks up the railing, anytime you have one of these posts. So you can decide if you want, you know, a start post at the beginning of the sketch and an end post at the end. And you can decide whether you want these things at all. So you can actually choose at the top of the list here, there's a none option. And then your railing wouldn't have any of these heavy duty posts at all. You can also see that you could choose maybe a slightly smaller one that you might want to use at intermediate locations along the length of the railing. Now below this you can see here that there is an angles greater than feature, and you can see here it says angles greater than 0 degrees. Now what does that mean? Corner posts at angles greater than 0 degrees. Now you'll notice that when I finish this railing I get a post at the corner. Now if I go back and take this sketch and drag it around so it's collinear with the first part of the sketch, no post. So that is what this feature means here. Angles greater than 0. So that means that if I edit this railing sketch, so it's just got a little kink in it, I get a post there. Now, the other options that you have are each segment end. So that means anytime that you've got a break in that pink line, you will get a post. So going back to my railing sketch line here, if I were to use the break command and put in another segment here, and if I were just to draw another segment myself, regardless of whether it's collinear or not, Revit will put a post each time you have a break in that pink line that you draw. So all of those posts in the middle here are called corner posts. Okay, let's go over to page 7. So what we're going to talk about now are some features that were actually added to Revit's railing system after these rails were produced. So these rails that you see here, I've had these for probably, I don't know, 8 years now. These features of railings were added into Revit quite some time ago, probably 2005 or something like that. So Revit has been overdue for some new railing features because, like I said, when we work with these glass panels, they're always a finite length and can't seem to it becomes a fussy business when you're putting them on stairs where all the different railings are at different lengths and so on. Now, more recently, because of the problem on stairs where these rails would end up going up, taking a big jump vertically, and then carrying on around the stair to try and make the railing work out, but not working so well as a handrail, the developers of Revit added these handrails and top rails, and we're going to talk about that on the top of page 7. Now, this probably won't happen to you folks that often, where you get an old Revit file and you go in and you look at it and you go, oh, that's a really great railing. I need to adjust the handrail feature on it. So when I go into my type properties here, the features I'm going to talk to you about now aren't in this railing. This is an old railing, and because it was made in an earlier release of Revit, it doesn't have these features. So I'm like, okay, now what do we do? Well, watch what happens. Look right down here, folks. We're right below identity data and this white space down below. Watch what happens. I'm going to make a new railing type using the duplicate tool. Whoa, look at that. Top rail, handrail 1 and 2. That just got added. So in the off chance that you folks get an old railing style, if you don't see top rail, handrail 1 and 2 in the list, then you know that you've got like a circa 2005, 2007 Revit file that just hasn't been updated yet. So as soon as Revit 2013 came along, they added these features that we're going to talk about. Now, what the top rail is meant to be with regards to your Revit or to your railing design, it's meant to be like the decorative cap on your rail. Now, the special functionality of these top rails is that they can be extended. This top rail can be extended longer than the railing itself. And you're like, why would you want to do that? I don't know. The top rail feature is something I've never been able to figure out why somebody wanted it, but I guess there's probably a big enough architect in the States who'd be like, you know, Autodesk, it'd be really cool if we could take that elliptical top railing on our stair and extend it out 8 feet in each direction to catch people as they walk by. So honestly, I don't know why it's there. The handrail feature, I do understand, and we will get into that now. I'm going to close this file and just open up the regular architectural template. Alright, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go find the railing tool here and just choose to sketch a railing in the architectural template. And I think this one it does have a top rail. So here, we'll just show you what it looks like. Okay, so there's the railing. Just drew a chunk of it here. And there it is in 3D. So this is about as drop dead simple as railing designs come. This is a railing style that actually has no rails. If I go to its type properties, so this is the handrail rectangular in the out-of-the-box architectural template. When I go into the rail structure dialog box here, we got nothing. So this horizontal piece that you see coming across is not defined here in rail structure. It is a top rail. And like I said, the feature of this top rail, which I have to tab select, so there it is there. This now allows me now to select this top rail independently of the rest of the railing. I can choose edit rail now, and as it says in our notes, we can choose edit path. And you guys see this purple line? That is the path. So that means now I can draw an extension here like so, and I'm done. So what I've done here is I've added 2 feet onto my top rail, and it's a different length than my railing itself. So anytime you got a railing, remember you can hit edit path. There's the length of the railing itself, but I've tab selected my top rail so I can edit it and then edit the path. Again, I don't really know what the application is for this. Somebody must have had one. Now, top rails and handrails are kind of like a design within a design. And what I mean by that is that when you go to your railing and you go to its type properties, top rail and handrail, these definitions exist separately from a railing style. You guys know about wall styles and text styles. Well, with railing styles, these make use of top and handrail styles that are stored separately in Revit's interface. So if we go down to families and expand railings, in here we have top rail type and handrail type. So these things here, these top rails and handrails, are defined separately from the railings themselves and can then be used in various railing styles that you may work out. So for instance, for our top rail here, we've got this rectangular 2x2, an elliptical, and a circular. So that means that I could come into my regular old railing style here and go to its type properties and swap out the rectangular 2x2 for the elliptical one, because that sounds way cooler. There it is. Hit OK, and now, hey. That's interesting. Maybe it's because I've been monkeying around with the top rail. Let's see if I reset it. Ooh. Come on. It's supposed to be. Feeling a little let down, everybody. Like, clearly you can see here I've gone to edit type, I've chosen a circular handrail, and it's not giving me my new choice here. Wow. Okay, you know what I'm going to do? Just draw a new little version of this handrail. Just bear with me for a moment here. I just want to make sure this is actually working, or whether I need to submit a bug report to Autodesk for there. No, look, it's working here, but
Can I say something?
you can.
I had the same problem. I did like reset railings on top of the.
And did it bring the?
Yeah.
It did. Okay. All right. So maybe what I'd been, because folks that I had edited this this top rail using the edit mode, it probably locked in and remembered my choice for the profile at the top. So that is what the top rail does. Now, the handrail is a function which, as you can see here, can be added to a railing style if you want. So there's your handrail 1 and handrail 2. Now, why is there 2 of them? Well, the reason is that you might have sort of a round, graspable handrail on one side that's at a height to suit people who are walking. And then on the other side, you might choose to have a handrail that is lower to facilitate people in wheelchairs. So these handrails can be put on either side of your railing. So here you can see that to any railing style, I can add a handrail. So here you can see I've added it. So once I've chosen it, I can't choose none. I have to choose which side it's going on. So I'm using a circular 1.5 inch handrail on the left side, and then here on the other side, I'll choose a different shape. And this one, I'll use it on the right side. Now you can also see that there's a left and right. So this way you could have the same handrail on both sides and define it all in one fell swoop. But if you want a different profile on either side of your handrail, well, now you can see I've got it. So at 3 feet off the ground, I've got square on one side, rectangular on the other. Now if I want to make my top rail a little higher, I think that was my elliptical, double click on it, and here its height is, oh yeah, no, it takes its height from the railing. Okay. So my top rail. So if I want to make that 42 inches, I go into my railing style, find the top rail feature, and set the height that I want for it. So there we go. Now you can see here that there are handrail styles that are wall mounted, and you folks can see there's the wall mounts that are being provided. Now what you would do then is that you would need to have a railing style that has no pickets. And crazily enough, I don't think any of the handrail styles that are in Revit out of the box have a wall handrail. So what does this mean? It means that you can have handrail definitions and top rail definitions in your project that aren't being used. Handrail and top rail definitions that are here in this railings folder must be added into a railing style for them to be seen. So just because I have a handrail style that says wall mounted pipe doesn't mean I'm ever going to see it unless I have a railing style that uses it. So here's what I'm going to do. Edit type. I'm going to make a new railing style. I'm going to duplicate it, and I'm going to call this pipe wall mounted. So in this railing style, I'm going to ask Revit to use the handrail type that will allow me to put it on a wall when I don't need pickets or when I don't need a guard. So now I've got the railing style name, but now I need to go into my rails here. I don't need any of these rails, so I'm going to go into the rail dialog box and I'm going to nuke them all. Bye-bye. Then I'm going to go into my balusters. Don't need any of these either, so I just switch to none. And if I had some extra ones here, I'd have to delete them. In your railing style dialog box, you have to have at least one row that says none. So same down here with my corner posts, I don't need any of those either. So none, none, none. So I've got a baluster dialog box that literally has nothing defined in it. So that gets rid of my verticals and my horizontals. So my rail and balusters are nothing. And I don't want a top rail either. No top rail. So from this wall mounted railing, I want no rails, no balusters, no top rail. And the only handrail I want is the pipe, wall mounted. And if you choose the left position, it will put it kind of where you expect it to put it, on the sides of your stairs. So here, if I go and put in a stair now, so I've got my stairs here. So if I just wanted to use those wall-mounted railings, I'd swap the railings that are here in my stair and use the wall-mounted ones instead. And like I said, the left position for your in your handrail style, the left position is the one that makes it look like the wall mounts actually point into the wall. If you use right, it makes it look like they're pointing into the opening, which doesn't make any sense. There we go. Now, the bottom of page 7, this bothers me. It really bothers me. I really sympathize with you folks who come in here after a day's work. You've had a whole bunch of BS to deal with. You've had consultants to deal with. You've had owners to deal with. Authorities having jurisdiction. And then you get to deal with this bullshit. And what I mean is, in the Railings dialog box here, let's just talk about how this is disorganized. It's not organized, it's disorganized. In the Railings dialog, or in the Railings folder in the project browser, at the bottom of page 7, I explain what is going on. Now, I bold-faced handrail type, railing, and top rail type, because those three will always be found when you go into the project browser and look under railings. So there you go. Railings, handrail type, railing, and top rail type. Okay, so this railing style I've defined here, where are all of these listed? They're listed under railing, which is sorted under railings. So I go to railings, and then I go to railing, and that's where it lists all the railing styles. So what's all the rest of this crap then here under railings? Well, in the notes, balusters, railing supports, and terminations are all special kinds of families that are loaded to help us define our railings. So balusters, as I've said, are the pickets. Railing supports are the little knobs that you see holding this handrail in place. And then terminations, they can be things that are added to the bottoms of your rails, like where the rail would go into like a clamp, or into one of those like an escutcheon that the pipe would stop and terminate against. Now, does anybody have a really good, relevant Part 3 question or Part 3 wish item for this railing? Yes, the extension, the code required extension at the bottom and top of the stairs. And that's not defined in the railing style, it's defined in the handrail style. So we go into our handrail style here. Where is it? Handrail type. And our pipe wall mount, because that's the one that's up there. So you double click on it, and inside here we've got our extensions. So we can extend it here. So we're going to extend it to the wall and give it a 1 foot out. Same at the top, to the wall, and 1 foot there as well. And there we go. So it comes down stairs, extends a foot, and then goes back into the wall.
Can you also change the clearance from the hangers from the wall to the...
Yeah. So inside your pipe wall mount here, there is a hand clearance feature right there. Yeah. So I actually really like this this handrail type system. Like when you go in here, all the stuff that you see in here, it's all pretty straightforward. Part 9 asks for supports every 1.2 meters, so that's already sorted in there as well. So those of you who are doing residential projects and don't so much need the extension, but you need those 4-foot supports, that's been placed in there quite nicely as well.
Wes, what if you wanted to bend the tube rather than have a mitered joint on the extension?
Yeah, no, these ones here, I don't think there's, yeah, I don't think we get really that much nicer.
It's not something we can go in and edit that
No,
extension.
not really, no. It's, Revit just kind of hits an old 90-degree angle there and heads off into the corner. So, yeah, I mean, to put a nice radius on this, I don't think you're going to be able to do that unless you build a termination family, which you could get into and find out what that is, where you could model basically the same radius here and then give it a bend, a nice bend as it turns the corner to go back into the wall. So then what you'd have on your pipe wall mount, instead of having an extension here of 1 foot, you'd use this bottom and top termination where you build your own family that has that little piece of pipe that extends from the handrail. Be a little bit more work. So when it comes down to it, I mean, your railing shop drawings are going to drive the bus on this anyhow. And if you wanted to do this in plan, you'd probably end up doing a call out. So just to show you how I'd handle this situation. So here I'd grab my little call out tool and, you know, and then when I got to this view, I'd like nuke the 3D handrail and do something in 2D instead. So, right? So I would hide this thing. Object invisible. So that, again, click it up to my light bulb up here and hide it. And then I just, in 2D, draw whatever I wanted to get detailed by my folks who are doing the handrail shop drawings. Okay, that is all for railings for tonight. So I'm going to stop the stream here and help you folks out with whatever you've got on your minds.